Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Amy. I am a mum of 2 boys and also happen to love reading. So if you want to watch videos about motherhood but also mainly about books, then please consider subscribing. It would really mean a lot. First off, I want to apologise that I haven't uploaded for quite a while. I had a family emergency that I needed to go and be with my family for. A couple of my family members are quite poorly, and then, as you can probably tell by my voice, I'm sick. My mum, I think, gave all of us a chest infection, so me and the boys both have really bad coughs, bad chests. My husband seems to be the only one who has escaped this, so yeah, I'm sorry if my throat sounds a bit raspy, or you can hear that I sound sick, because I am sick. But I wanted to get a couple of videos filmed, so after this video I'm going to be filming another one. So they will be put out one after the other. So this video is going to be my February wrap up. So I read 7 books in February, which I think is pretty good, and this is so exciting. I got approved for my first ARCs. If you don't know what an ARC is, it is an advanced reader copy. So you get to read a book before its official release date, which is so exciting that authors want me to read their books before they're released. And I was so happy when I got accepted for my first ARCs, and I've been accepted for quite a few more. So I'm slowly working my way through them. But yeah, I'll go through all the books that I've read, all my ARCs and everything in this video. So if you are interested in my February wrap up, then please keep on watching. So let's go through the stats. So I use Storygraph for my stats, and I'll pop the little graphs on the screen. So in February I read 7 books equaling to 2,522 pages. The themes were mostly dark, but I also had reflective, tense, challenging, mysterious, informative, emotional and adventurous. I had 1 book that was over 500 pages, 2 books that were 300 to 499 pages, and 4 less than 300 pages. In terms of genres, I had 2 LGBTQIA+, 2 romance, 2 horror, 1 adult themed, 1 YA, 1 true crime, 1 thriller, 1 science, 1 memoir, 1 historical, 1 contemporary, 1 comic and 1 biography. So that is a lot of genres in 7 books, but I did read quite a diverse amount of books, and I'm super happy that I managed to expand my horizons a bit more this month. So I had 3 digital, because 3 of them were ARCs, because you could, I think it's only if you're quite, you've got quite a big following, or you have a PO box on BookTube, that you get sent physical copies of books. Now I got all of mine through NetGalley, so you can download them to your Kindle, or you can download the NetGalley app and read them through your phone, which is what I've been doing. So I had 3 digital, which were ARCs, and then 4 physical copies, but I rented all of my physical copies from the library, so I don't actually have them with me anymore, but I'll pop pictures of them on the screen and everything. And my average rating was 3.61 stars, so it's not been the best month in terms of rating. I did have 1 2-star read, which I will go through, but yeah, there was 1 book which I was quite disappointed in, which upset me because I was quite excited to read it. But without further ado, let's jump into all the books I read in February. So the first book that I read in February was actually my second non-fiction of the year. So my first non-fiction that I read in January was The Five, The Untold Lives of the Women Killed by Jack the Ripper. I've kept with a similar theme with this one, because I do have an interest in true crime. So this month I read The Stranger Beside Me by Anne Rule, and this is about the Ted Bundy cases in the 1970s and 1980s, and I rated this one 3.25 stars. this was a heavy book. I wasn't expecting it not to be heavy because it's about a mass murderer. It's about a serial killer. So I don't know why I was expecting it not to be heavy, but there was just so many graphic details in this about the actual crimes that occurred and the things that I didn't even know. And I was a bit like, oh my gosh, this is so disgusting and awful. So it's written by Anne Rule, and Anne Rule used to work with Ted Bundy in a suicide prevention clinic or a crisis clinic, and she said he was one of the nicest people that she ever knew, and she never believed for the longest time that he was capable of doing these crimes. But it basically follows the journey of their friendship from when they first met each other right up until his execution. And it goes through her, it gives you a lot of factual information about the women that were killed, but also it gives you her personal perspective of her relationship with Bundy and how she felt so conflicted because she didn't think that he was capable of these things. And she went to the trial. I can't remember if she went to his execution or not. I don't think she did. But it was very interesting seeing that other point of view from a friend of Bundy. It's not often that you get friends of the killers actually write a book about it. But Anne Rule was a very famous crime writer before, or she was starting to become a famous crime writer before she wrote the book about Bundy. But yeah, it was quite an interesting read. But it got a low rating from me just because it was so heavy. It was just 500 plus pages of just put pure facts, which I struggle with. I'm not a very big non-fiction reader, but it was just straight up facts and gore because it included all the gory details about everything. And it took me a while to read this because it was so heavy. So I might stray away from this kind of book for a while because my heart felt very heavy and my mind felt very heavy afterwards. So probably going to stay away from the true crime books for a while. So this next one is my worst rated book so far. I was very close to DNFing this, but I decided to stick with it. But it's not a book. I remember I write down the synopsis of every book I read, but I found it really hard to even write a synopsis because I forgot everything so quickly. So I rated this book 2 stars, and it's The Cloisters by Katie Hayes. I was so disappointed by this book, and I think from all the reviews that I read on Goodreads and Storygraph as well, a lot of other people were disappointed. It was just so confusing, and there were bits of the story that didn't make sense. There were bits of the story that I was just completely and utterly confused by. And the relationship between Rachel and Anne, Anne's the main character and Rachel is a side character, and the relationship that those two developed very quickly, it was just very strange and didn't make much sense to me at all. And I was cringing, like it made me cringe, like the way that their relationship was written about. So the main character Anne, she gets appointed to work under a museum curator named Patrick in part of the Cloisters because she goes to work at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. But when she gets there, she's told, "I'm really sorry, we've had to make cuts. Your position isn't available anymore." But obviously she's devastated by that, and then this Patrick dude comes along and he's like, "Oh, you can come and work for me in the Cloisters." And she has to do all of this research with Rachel, who is kind of like Patrick's assistant, I guess you could say. And all three of them, it kind of turns into like a weird love triangle thing. She also ends up having quite an unpredictable relationship with the cloister gardener called Leo, but they're all connected with each other, and it focuses a lot on tarot and divination, and not having control of your destiny, basically, like your fate is written in the stars, that kind of thing. And I just did not enjoy this book. There wasn't many characters, but they weren't developed very well, and the way that Rachel and Anne's relationship was written about, like I said, it just made me cringe. It was cringe-worthy. And then, like, Anne also feels like she has feelings for Patrick as well, even though he's like almost double her age. But she ends up having this unpredictable relationship with Leo, and they're all connected with each other, which is just, I was reading it and I was like, what the heck is going on? So I don't think I'll be picking up any other books from Katie Hayes because I just did not enjoy this. So the next book I read, I actually really enjoyed. I rated this 4.5 stars, and it is Cunning Women by Elizabeth Lee, and this is set in Lancashire, so very, very close to where I grew up. I grew up in Cumbria, and Cumbria used to be part of Lancashire, so it used to be considered part of Lancashire, so very, very close to my heart. So this is focused on the 17th century, so the 1600s, and the main character, Sarah, lives with her brother, her younger sister, and her mum, and they are seen as, or her mum is seen as, a cunning woman, so someone who makes concoctions and potions, I guess you could say, for different ailments. People who were in need or needed healing will go to her, but they are seen as outcasts. It's basically at night time when all of these villagers come to them and say, I need help with this, can you help me? But don't tell anyone because you're seen as a witch, basically. But it's because the villagers keep quiet about it that they're safe. But during the day, they're seen as outcasts and they don't go outside. So they are very cut off from the outside world. And that's until Sarah meets Daniel, and he's trying to tame a horse. And they basically form a forbidden relationship. So there is very, very strong there's very, very strong forbidden marriage, forbidden relationship tropes in here, and, you know, almost found family. But at the end of the book, it is very, very sad. I'm going to say that. It's very, very sad. And it's not the ending I wanted, and it made me frustrated, which is why I docked 0.5 star, because I just wanted this to end so differently. But I know that that's probably how it would have ended in real life, and it just made me really sad because you see Sarah and Daniel's relationship blossom and to be with each other. Daniel says, because Daniel is a farm worker, I'll talk to my dad and see if he can hire you as a maid. And that does end up working for a little bit, but then there's this big twist in the book and everything gets ruined for them. I'm not going to say any more than that, but it made me really, really sad. And I almost cried at the end of this book, and I think that is a credit to Elizabeth Lee's writing. And I just wish it ended differently. But yeah, I would definitely recommend this book if you want to read some books about witch hunts or forbidden relationships, that kind of thing. Definitely give this book a try if you want to. So let's talk about my first ARC that I got accepted for. This is so exciting. So again, I go through NetGalley to get all my ARCs, and I'm very, very honoured that the authors are allowing me to read these books before publication. So this one is called Good Christian Girls, and it's by Elizabeth Bradshaw. I rated this 4 stars, and very similar to Cunning Women, the ending wasn't what I expected, and it made me really sad. It made me super, super sad. And the only reason why so there were 2 reasons why I docked a star. One, because I just wish there was a bit more substance to the characters' backstories, and 2, the ending didn't go how I expected it or how I wanted it to, and I just wish that it was there and everyone lived happily ever after, but I know that that's not how it happens. So this is definitely a coming of age book, I would say, and we have two storylines. So we have Lacey, who is a Christian girl, and she lives with her parents who own this campground called Camp Lavender, and they basically have a retreat once a year for like 6 weeks, I think, or 2 weeks possibly. I can't remember if it was 2 or 6 weeks. But it's a Christian retreat that they run once a year during the summer. We have Jo, who is the other girl in the story and the other POV. She gets sent to Camp Lavender to see if she can be saved because she is homosexual, and her mum and her grandma want to see if sending her to this camp will cure her. But as you can probably guess, Jo and Lacey form a little friendship that ends up turning into something a little bit more, and it is a lot about being true to yourself and defying your faith to be true to yourself. And this just made me so happy. There were parts in this book where I genuinely laughed out loud, and seeing the relationship blossom between Jo and Lacey was just absolutely heartwarming, like teenage heartthrob, and invoking all of those feelings of when you first find love in your teens and you have your first serious relationship. It just invoked all of those feelings, and it made me super, super happy. But then the ending came, and then I was super, super sad because I was like, no, this isn't how I want it to end. But it was an absolutely fantastic book, but I rated it 4 stars. So next is my second non-fiction book that I read in February, and my third non-fiction overall in the year of 2024 so far. And it is Past Mortem's Life and Death Behind Mortuary Doors by Carla Valentine. And you can probably guess what it's about from the title. It's about what happens after you die. I found it super, super interesting. I rated it 4.5 stars. And she now works in a pathology museum in London. I don't know if the public can access it. I'm pretty sure you can, unless it's private archives. I'll have to do a bit more research into it. So Carla Valentine has had an extensive career in doing postmortems, and she's worked all across the country, and this book was absolutely fantastic because it gives you a lot of factual information. A lot of it was a little bit much, which is why I kind of docked 1/2 star, because there was some of it was like, oh my god, this is absolutely vile. But you are talking about postmortem here, so she's going to be factual. She's just going to say, yeah, this is how we do this procedure when it comes to a postmortem. And she talks a lot about her personal experiences as well, which I really, really liked. It wasn't just facts. And you weren't overloaded with information. It was a perfect mix of factual information and her personal experiences in the field. And how it's very male dominated as well. You don't see a lot of females working in that field. And I just found it super, super interesting. And I might even consider looking into a career in it. I know you have to go to university, which is the only thing that's kind of putting me off, because I have 2 beautiful boys, and trying to go to uni at the same time would be really, really hard. But I might consider it as a future career maybe. I think that would be really, really interesting. And this book has kind of invoked my interest a little bit. So, yeah, we'll see where that takes us. So the last 2 books that I read in February were both arcs. One of them was released back in 2020, but I'll talk about that one after I've talked about this one. Now, this next one was called Lies That Bind by April Yates and Ray Knowles. I rated this 4 stars, but I can see why it would get a lower rating than that, because there are so many trigger warnings in this book. They are given at the beginning of the book, and rightly so, which I think is a feature that many more authors need to do. They need to have trigger warnings at the start of their books, whether it's part of a series and the readers are familiar with what happens in the series. If it is something that is a first time for a reader, there needs to be trigger warnings at the start. And this book delivered on those trigger warnings. It didn't tell you when they were coming, obviously, but they are scattered throughout this book. It does mainly focus on more sexual themes, which I can't mention on YouTube. But this is a very sexualized book, and it's another LGBTQIA plus book, and we focus on Adele and Lorelai, and they are in a homosexual relationship, but this is in the 1800s, and Adele is originally from America. Lorelai has lived in England her whole life, and they end up finding each other, and they run sham seances, so fake seances, and that's how they make their money. And one day, this very strange woman called Viola comes along and basically just train wrecks everything, tries to break Lorelai and Adele apart, and just ruins everything. And I personally had genuine hate for Viola. I think hate is a very strong word, but I hated that character, and it's a credit to Yates and Knowles. Like, it's just it made me so infuriated, and they were like, this Viola is basically trying to turn them against each other, turn Adele and Lorelai against each other, and you're like, no, don't listen to her. And the fact that it's invoking those kind of emotions while you're reading this book was just absolutely perfection. The reason why I rated it 4 stars was, one, because the themes are very, very graphic, and I did find it a bit much at times, and there were times where I had to put it down and take a breather from reading it. If it didn't have those trigger warnings in, and it didn't have those themes in, I probably would have read it in about a day. It was a fabulous book, but it's just because of those themes. They were so heavy, and just, it was really, really hard to read at times. And I just wish there was a bit more backstory about Viola's character. She just seemingly appears out of nowhere at the start of the book, and you find out why she's been sent later on in the book, but it's very near the end, and I just wish there was a bit more substance at the start to her character, and not just, oh, this is the strange woman that's appeared. I just wish there was a bit more backstory at the start rather than right at the end. But apart from that, it was an absolutely fabulous read. But if you are a sensitive reader like me, I would say go into this book with caution if you either get it as an arc or when it gets released. And the last book, this is technically a comic, so it was a comic ebook, so an e-comic, but this was released in 2020, like I said. So I did get a proof of this through NetGalley, but it's not technically an arc because it's not an advanced reader copy. It's out everywhere now. But it is Mercy by Mirka Andolfo, and this follows, it's a gothic horror comic, and it's about this parasite that's infecting and killing people in this small town after a mining tragedy opens up this portal for these parasites to get through. And through the first few pages of the comic, we're introduced to the actual subjects of the parasites, so who the parasites have mainly infected. And this is Lady Helene and her butler Goodwin, either Goodwin or Goodwill, I can't read my own writing. I rated this 3 stars. It just was not for me personally. It was very gory, very, very horror based, and there were lots of different timelines in this book, and that's pretty much from the start, so I found it quite difficult to keep up with. But the art style was absolutely stunning. I mean, even the cover of this book was absolutely gorgeous, and I love the art style. I love the comic art style, and I just didn't find it very, I mean, it was very short because it was a comic. I think it's 6 volumes overall, and the arc that I received through NetGalley, you get all 6 parts of it just in one big book. I read it in a day, but it was a tough one because parts of it I enjoyed, but then there were other parts where I was like just trudging to get through. and that's the reason why I gave it 3 stars, because I just didn't enjoy it as much, because it's personally not my thing. If you like hot gothic horror comics, then you would probably love this, but it just wasn't for me personally. That's a wrap on February. So I've decided that I'm not going to do TBRs anymore because life just gets in the way. Like I said, I have 2 children. The past couple of weeks have been pretty hectic because all of my family live in Cumbria still, and we had to make an emergency trip up there, so I didn't have time to read, and reading wasn't my top priority when we were up there. So I've only read 1 book so far, and it is the 12th of March today. So I'm going to try and read as much as I can, but this probably isn't going to be my best reading month. So I've got 1 physical book and 2 arcs on the go currently. So hopefully I can get back up to speed a little bit more, but I know that there's going to be some months that are absolutely rubbish in terms of reading, but all I can do is try. So I've decided I'm not going to put a pressure on myself to have a TBR, because I have so many books, and the next book I'm filming is a book haul because I went a little bit crazy with buying books, which you will see in the next video. So if you have enjoyed, please don't forget to subscribe, keep on reading, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!